Chapter 11:12. Danger lurks on every side too. What is the thing that's most grave? Su Luo asked immediately following after. She was a fire elemental system mage. Her resistance to high temperature was much stronger than an average person. Now, everyone was drenched in sweat. She was still pretty good. Nangong Liuyun's complexion was solemn, but he still rubbed Su Luo's head. Be careful of that dense fog. Dense fog? Su Luo's gaze looked around her surroundings. Sure enough, in the wake of the rising temperature, from all around, a dense fog gradually began to multiply, blurring people's line of sight. The dense fog that could even make Nangong Liyun have restrained fear. Su Luo's heart was already on high alert. As expected, those magical beast rats were only a prelude. Rather, this dense fog was the trump card. The dense fog became stronger and stronger. Very soon, everyone's line of sight was only within 10 square meters. Why do I feel dizzy? Li Yaoyao leaned on Situ Ming's back as she inquired with weak breath. So it wasn't only me. Luo Die released a breath in relief. She had thought that only she felt dizzy. As it turns out, Li Yaoyao also felt it. It could clearly be seen that this was a widespread phenomenon. Prepare for battle. Nangong Liuyun's voice was cold and ruthless like iron. It seemed ice-blooded. He had just finished speaking. She only saw the dense fog transform into a black face. These faces looked sinister, showing their teeth that would shock people's eyes and astonish their heart. Without waiting for everyone to react, these faces began to attack fiercely. One could only see a face approach Luo Die, and without any tender protective feelings for the fairer sex, it opened its mouth wide and directly sprayed a mouthful of black fog towards Luo Die. Luo Die sensed the ferociousness of the mouthful of black fog, and she rolled on the spot to dodge the black fog attack. However, her head avoided it, but half strands of her hair couldn't avoid it. Those half strands of her hair, in a split second, were burned into dust and scattered on the ground. Oh heavens! Luo Die was overly frightened. She directly sat on the ground. She didn't expect that these faces' black fog would be so ferocious. Its corrosive nature was actually this strong. Her waist-length black hair was now burned until it only reached her shoulders. If she had dodged even a little bit slower, very likely, it wouldn't have been only her hair that got burned. Thinking up to here, Luo Die's back was covered in sweat. Her back felt cold. Her entire body became stiff, with her complexion as pale as paper. Those faces seemed to be controlled by someone, separately surrounding the people at the scene. At everyone's side was at least 10 faces. What to do? Quickly think of an idea. Li Yaoyao was scared to the point that her legs and feet felt weak. She was already weak. Now, she could only repeatedly dodge. Her physical strength was nearly used up with nothing left. She took a furtive look at Su Luo and saw her safely and steadily staying inside the protection cover. She even acted as if she was taking things very seriously by enjoying their thrilling actions. For a moment, Li Yaoyao was so jealous that she almost spit out a mouthful of blood. This was simply too unfair. Regardless of whether it was voluntary or not, when all's said and done, everyone entered this Xian's residence. The biggest goal was to look for medicine for Su Luo, but she, on the other hand, along this entire journey, seemed to be on a scenic tour, leisurely and at ease. Whenever she encountered danger, she would hide in that protective cover that was very safe. Li Yaoyao was angry and bitter in her heart, yet was helpless. Who told her to have a person that was an exceptional expert who cupped her in the center of his palm, afraid she would lose a single hair? In fact, at the moment, Su Luo was not as relaxed as she seemed on the surface. At this moment, more and more sinister faces were circling around Nangong Liyun. Moreover, they were all the ones that had the greatest strength. Although Nangong Liyun's strength was formidable, but because he used 30% of his strength to maintain Su Luo's protection cover, therefore, confronted with these sinister faces with formidable strength that approached like a torrential rush, now, he had no choice but to respond with all his strength. Chapter 11:13. Danger lurks on every side. 3. Those sinister black faces spit out mouthful after mouthful of black fog. Very quickly, the surroundings were enveloped in this black fog, Everyone seemed to be in pitch-black, gathering darkness without stars. If it was only low visibility, then that's fine. The most serious thing was that this dark fog actually had a hallucinatory effect. Suddenly, Li Yaoyao's double-edged sword cut towards Situ Ming. Situ Ming had continuously protected Li Yaoyao by placing her at his back. How could he have anticipated that the person he was protecting would cut at him? Just at the moment when he hadn't discovered this, Situ Ming's back was seriously damaged. The cut was deep and long, blood flowing out with rolling sounds. Situ Ming's complexion was pale and looked at Li Yaoyao with disbelief. He staggered, unable to prop himself up. He sank to one knee and fell to the ground. But at this moment, Li Yaoyao had already sunk into madness. She lifted the double-edged sword and chopped towards Luo Diei, who was nearest to her. "Su Luo, I'll kill you. I'll kill you." Li Yaoyao brandished the long sword. Suddenly, the strength in her hands was so great as to be astonishing. At this moment, Luo Diei was already dizzy. Li Yaoyao rushed towards her like a crazy old woman, yet she seemed to be completely unaware of this. Crashed, a sharp and clear noise sounded. Li Yaoyao actually slashed Luo Diei's face, leaving behind a severe bloody scar. Luo Diei, in a daze, reached out with her hand and touched the bloodstain on her face. She lifted up her eyes and saw Li Yaoyao rushing up like a lunatic. Suddenly, Luo Diei seemed to have been possessed by a god. Her power increased astonishingly. With a push of her hand, she forcefully pushed Li Yaoyao away. Li Yaoyao hadn't had time to notice and heavily fell to the ground. She stood up without disregard for anything else and rushed up to fight with Luo Diei. Both of them had blank expressions in their eyes flickering, full of hatred and bitter resentment, as if they were facing the person they hated the most in this life. At this moment, the two of them had already sunk into a hallucination and lost all their reason. In the wake of these two people beginning to lose their minds, afterwards, the rest of the people also slowly sunk into a hallucination. For a moment, everyone was dizzy and confused. Until in the end, only Su Luo and Nangong Luyuan remained clear-headed. However, as time passed in seconds and minutes, the black fog in the surroundings became more and more dense. Even someone as strong as Nangong Luyuan was somewhat unable to manage it. That protection cover for Su Luo that he had maintained was also on the verge of collapse. Because now, all of the black faces were circling around Nangong Luyuan in a densely packed layer. Each and every one of them had their mouth open, spraying out black fog non-stop. Nangong Luyuan's figure swayed. The protective cover he maintained for Su Luo suddenly disintegrated. Nangong. Su Luo left the protection covering and impatiently rushed towards Nangong Luyuan. Because at this moment, Nangong Luyuan's face was covered with cold sweat. His face was like gold paper, with both eyes tightly closed. His brows tightly creased, as if he had sunk into an extremely painful state. Su Luo rushed up to Nangong Luyuan and promptly caught his tottering figure. "Nangong Luyuan, wake up!" Su Luo anxiously cried out loud. If even Nangong Luyuan was unable to resist this, then who could pass this challenge? But Nangong Luyuan's eyes remained tightly closed. His body was stiff as black iron, motionless, without a trace of a response. Following Su Luo's yell, an innumerable amount of black fog burst towards Su Luo. That black fog stung so much that Su Luo couldn't stop her tears from falling. The most serious thing was that those sinister faces smirked as they pounced towards Su Luo, encircling her in the middle. As far as the eyes could reach was all black fog. A countless number of sinister faces smirked as they came over. Su Luo's mental power was quite great, but in this limitless black fog, her mind also sunk into a dim state. This challenge, afraid it would be a total defeat. Chapter 11:14. Danger lurks on every side. 4. Su Luo's gaze gradually became fuzzy. While being mentally dizzy, she felt that she had returned to the modern world and was wandering about in the dark. That scene on top of Cloud Fall Mountain reappeared once again in her mind. "Kill him! Kill him!" A voice repeated this nonstop by her ear. The Su Luo right now was like a marionette. Her gaze stared blankly, holding up the dagger in a zombie-like manner. Step by step, she approached Nangong Luyun. Nangong Luyun lay on the ground, sticky perspiration rushing out on his face. His complexion was as pale as paper. Right now he was motionless, only his eyes were half-narrowed. "Luo Luo," Nangong Luyun called out with great difficulty. However, it seemed as if Su Luo completely didn't hear him. It also seemed as if she completely did not recognize the person in front of her. Still as before, she moved closer, step by step. That deeply cold Yanhua dagger gave off a metallic luster specific to it. Then, it extended horizontally above Nangong Luyun's snow-white neck. Now, Su Luo's entire face was lifeless and dull, but the hatred in her eyes was very clear. "Kill you, kill you, kill you. Yunqi, I'll kill you." Suddenly, Su Luo gave a loud yell, that dagger moving towards the next position. She lifted it up high and stabbed fiercely towards Nangong Luyun's heart. Right now, Su Luo had completely lost her bearings. Her right now had her heart's hatred for Yunqi magnified endlessly, to the degree that it was the last straw. At the summit of that cloud fall mountain, that dagger of Yunqi's was still the greatest sore point in her heart. Now, after this sore spot was magnified to an endless degree, not even Su Luo herself could control this hatred. Seeing the dagger was about to fall, Nangong Luyun's heart gave off some bitterness. The reason he pretended to be weak was to find the eye of this psychological array. If he made a move now, then his plan would fall through. He calculated this 1,000, no, 10,000 times, and figured that Su Luo could lose her wisdom. But he could never have imagined that she would pull out a dagger to stab him to death. Seeing the dagger that was lifted up high, about to fiercely stab down, Nangong Luyun's figure moved slightly, the hand hidden in his sleeves clenching tightly into a fist. Losing the opportunity, he could still look for another one, but he would absolutely not allow something to happen to Su Luo. If she killed him, his treasured Luo Luo would blame herself for a lifetime. He did not want her to live forever in self-blame. Just when Nangong Luyun's plan was about to be ruined, suddenly Su Luo felt a burst of acute pain in her head, a pain that bore into the heart, along with a furious voice roaring, "Stop! I command you to stop!" This sharp voice came from Su Luo's mind. The voice was so loud it was world-shaking, making the earth quake and mountains shake. For a moment, Su Luo only felt that both of her ears echoed with buzzing noises, with sharp pain from her eardrums, as if she was deaf. However, it was also because of this urgent yell that made Su Luo's hand pause slightly. Now, her dagger was at the position of Nangong Luyun's heart. There was only a tight fingernail's distance from his heart. It was a real thriller. That alarmed and furious voice wasn't uttered loudly by Nangong Luyun. Then, who could it be? Because that loud shouting voice woke up Su Luo's consciousness. When the awakened Su Luo saw herself holding a dagger stabbing towards Nangong Luyun, for a moment, she was confused and rattled. She clumsily did not know what to do with her hands and feet. Seeing Su Luo regain her consciousness, even though Nangong Luyun was amazed, however, the greater plan for the situation was still the most important. So he continued to pretend to have been poisoned, motionlessly lying there. Su Luo stood up in confusion. "Little stone, you are awake? In the end, what is going on?" Just now, she had heard it very clearly. That furious voice that had loudly cried out in alarm at the critical moment was no stranger. It was Little Stone that had been in a coma for a long time. Chapter 11:15. Danger lurks on every side. 5. She never expected that Little Stone would wake up in this moment, just in time to stop her stupid actions. If it was just a little bit late, she would pass her entire life in remorse. In Su Luo's mind, that piece of Little Stone coldly humphed. "Before, didn't you give me 2 chunks of fire source stone essence?" It was fortunate that these 2 chunks of fire source stone essence were pure, easily absorbed. After I absorbed it, why wouldn't I wake up? Having heard what was said, Su Luo's heart rejoiced faintly. Ever since the last time when Little Stone had saved her, he had continued to sink in a deep coma. For this reason, Su Luo was tangled for a while, but had no way to change the situation. She never expected that the 2 chunks of fire source stone essence actually saved Little Stone, and Little Stone, at the most critical moment, saved her again. This could really be considered one layer after another, constantly being pleasantly surprised. That's right. How did you just so happen to wake up now? Su Luo curiously asked, exchanging knowledge in her mind with him. Little Stone coldly humphed. Is it fine if I didn't wake up at this time? Don't tell me you want me to wait until you wave the dagger, about to commit suicide? Su Luo thought about it. That's right. If she killed Nangong Luyun, she would certainly kill herself and pay him back a life. To the ends of the earth, from poor to riches, even landing in the underworld. She would always be together with him. Just when Su Luo was standing around in confusion, within the dense fog, an enormous face quietly appeared. Him being concealed within a strange, enormous face wasn't at all unusual. However, that pair of deeply cold, dark, golden eyes unblinkingly stared fixedly on Su Luo. His eyebrows were tightly knotted. Inside this psychological array, there was actually a person who was clear-headed? Could a problem have occurred with the array? Just when his remote and cold gaze flickered uncertainly, a cold light faintly flashed through Nangong Liuyun's eyes. He lifted up his sleeves, a swoosh sound echoing. A wind blade broke through the space and shot towards that enormous face. At the same time, swoosh, 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 it seemed like 7,749 wind blades exploded out from all sides as they shot towards that enormous face. A total of 50 sheets of wind blades. Every one of them was very threatening. Nangong Luyun slowly stood up, with eyes narrowed slightly. The enormous face was the place where the eyes of the array was for this psychological array. In the beginning, when he pretended to be weak, it was so he could force this face to appear. But frankly, Nangong Liuyun's grasp of the outcome wasn't that big. However, Su Luo's appearance just happened to make up for this deficiency. This face, from the beginning, didn't take Su Luo seriously, but just because of this, Su Luo waking up by herself from within the psychological array made him feel strange and shocked him. As a result, this face appeared, consequently, giving Nangong Luyun an opportunity he could take advantage of. If he let this face pull back, finding it again would be difficult. Such an opportunity was fleeting. So, Nangong Luyun used all of his strength to attack. Rows of ice blades that couldn't be ignored sealed the paths in all directions, imprisoning this face within. Ah! This strange face gave off a weird screeching yell, like a mouse being squashed between 2 door shutters. The sound was mournful, making people tremble in fear. However, under Nangong Liuyun's full force strike, how could it escape once again? While the wind blades were disappearing, that face also disappeared into the atmosphere. Su Luo's body wasn't good to begin with. Then, she was enveloped within the thick fog. She had difficulty breathing, thus her body tottered on the verge of collapse. Nangong Luyun took a step forward, firmly catching Su Luo by her slender waist. Are you okay? Su Luo weakly half-opened her eyes and said softly without any strength. Don't worry, I'm fine. Nangong Luyun, with an aching heart, stroked Su Luo's hair. If it was possible, he really could not bear for her to receive the slightest harm. Chapter 11:16. Danger lurks on every side. 6. Fortunately, you weren't hurt. There was a smile in Su Luo's eyes. Having experienced the battle from a moment ago, how could Su Luo not understand that Nangong Luyun was pretending to be weak? Even if she really did thrust down that dagger, it's unlikely she would really have killed him. However, if he made a move, then it would really ruin the spoil the ship for half-penny worth of tar. Su Luo was really glad that she got the fire source stone essences from before. She also rejoiced that Little Stone had awoken at the critical moment. Just at this time, the dense black fog began to retreat and disperse. Very quickly, the black fog retreated until there were no traces left behind. Having broken through the eye of the array, the psychological array self-destructed. This 6th challenge was very difficult, but they still managed to get through the daunting experience without mishap. However, after the thick fog dispersed, when Su Luo saw the scene before her eyes, she was shocked by the ghastly sight. One could see Li Yaoyao badly battered and collapsed on the ground, motionless. It was unknown if she was dead or alive. Situ Ming shielded Li Yaoyao, his back pierced with numerous blades. Drenched with blood, he remained unconscious. Luo Haochen and Luo Die's bodies were also covered in blood. The surrounding desert was practically dyed red with blood stains. Ziyin and Beiqining had both fallen onto the sandy ground. Their bodies had been roasted until they were practically giving off smoke. All of these seemed to show a dejected defeat, withered and rotten, like a desperate battlefield. Su Luo was about to reach out to help them, but Nangong Luyun was a step ahead of her. His sleeve lifted up slightly, similar to a cool breeze brushing by, sweeping across those two people. Bei Qinying's thick eyelashes moved slightly. Then, his eyes slowly opened, and he sat up. He raised his head blankly and saw Su Luo and Nangong Luyun. Suddenly, like a carp, he rolled about and then jumped up. "Second brother, you're both fine." Before, it was as if he had a dream. An extremely realistic dream, and in that dream, Su Luo and Nangong Luyun both had died. However, now, both people were completely fine and unharmed. Everyone's bodies more or less suffered some injuries, but Nangong Liuyun's and Su Luo's bodies were completely neat and clean from top to bottom. Let alone having suffered injuries, they didn't even have a bit of dust on them. Bei Qining was immediately stupefied. How could anything possibly happen to us? Su Luo asked while laughing happily. Nangong Luyun slowly poured his spirit energy into her body, so that, not too long after, her vitality was restored. Now, she even had the frame of mind to make fun of Bei Qining. But, somewhat puzzled, Bei Qining scratched his head. Just now, we had entered a psychological array. Everything was all an illusion. Nothing was real. Su Luo said firmly. It was all an illusion? Yeah, all of it was an illusion, Su Luo said seriously. Then that's good, that's good. Bei Qining let out a huge breath of relief. Just at this moment, everyone woke up in succession. Seeing each other's miserable appearance, they were all inadvertently stunned. It really hurts. Li Yaoyao felt that her entire body was about to fall apart, as if this body wasn't hers anymore. It's already pretty good that we're able to survive, yet you're still yelling that it hurts and that you're tired. If it weren't for Luo Luo and Nangong Luyun, right now, we would all be long dead without intact corpses. Ziyin sent a displeased glare at Li Yaoyao. Panting with rage, Li Yaoyao turned her face away. Luo Jie called upon Li Yaoyao in a rage to settle this account. "Do I have a hatred with you? Why did you grab a blade and try to kill me?" Li Yaoyao had a helplessly blank expression. How could she have taken a blade and try to kill Luo Jie? Was there anything more absurd than this? With a cold tone, Situ Ming took over the discussion. At that time, Yaoyao's mind wasn't normal. She herself didn't know what she did. You can't blame this matter on her. Moreover, the people behind the scenes really want us to kill each other. This is something that we couldn't have escaped from. This was indeed the truth. If they really started to argue about it, then there really wouldn't be an end. Right at this moment, four turntables appeared in mid-air. Chapter 11:17, The Seventh Challenge, 1. Li Yaoyao's team, 40 points. Bei Qinying's team, 40 points. Luo Die's team, 40 points. Su Luo's team, 70 points. For this challenge, Nangong Luyun and Su Luo had won again. However, this matter was expected. For this challenge, Su Luo had once again exerted herself and contributed spirit pets. In the end, she even came to a mutual agreement with Nangong Luyun to try hard to save this desperate crisis. If they couldn't win with this, then it really would be against all reason. Naturally, the rewards for this challenge went towards Nangong Luyun and Su Luo's direction. Su Luo reached out her hand to receive the ball of white light mist before her eyes. The dense light mist gradually dispersed, revealing a purple-colored crystal stone in Su Luo's palm. However, the purple-colored crystal stone before Su Luo's eyes was very small. It was about the size of her fingernail. Curiously, Su Luo looked in Nangong Luyun's direction. With this glance, she couldn't help but spit out blood. That master of the 9 different palace halls was really extremely biased. The purple-colored crystal stone that he gave Nangong Luyun was as big as a pigeon egg, but the one he gave her was as small as a flake of fingernail. Seeing Su Luo's pissed-off expression, Nangong Luyun had a smile on his face. He rubbed her head lovingly. "All right, don't be angry anymore. This piece also belongs to you." "Really?" Su Luo's eyes lit up. Actually, she only silently cursed a few sentences in her heart. In fact, she also knew, this time, she hadn't contributed much to passing this challenge. Able to get a purple-colored crystal stone as big as a fingernail was already very good. One had to know that, to an extremely high-level expert like her master, this purple-colored crystal stone still possessed a great deal of attraction. Nangong Luyun laughed. "As long as you want it and as long as I have it, as long as she wanted it and as long as he had it." Such a simple line. Yet to fulfill this promise, how difficult of a matter was it? However, Nangong Luyun just said it so easily. Not to mention this piece of purple-colored crystal stone, be it 10 or 100 pieces, as long as Su Luo liked it, Nangong Luyun would give it all to her. Su Luo smiled with her eyes. As tears bathed her eyes, affection rushed forth from their depths. That sentence, it was impossible for her not to be emotionally moved. The affection between the two people was vivid. They were touchingly in love and inseparable. It seemed as if this desert dyed with blood had gained a bit of warmth. Li Yaoyao was most unaccustomed to seeing the affection between these two people, and she scoffed coldly. "This could be considered as passing the 6th challenge, but we still haven't found the route to the 7th challenge." Li Yaoyao's tone carried a hint of vicious undercurrents, in a flash, puncturing the warm atmosphere. Everyone immediately returned to reality. Having just gone through the battle from a moment ago, everyone was injured and collapsed on the ground. They already didn't have any surplus strength. Moreover, the 6th challenge was already this difficult. Only heavens know what the 7th challenge would be like. Only the unknown was frightening. Everyone could not help but have lingering fear towards the last 3 unknown challenges. However, Nangong Luyun's expression was as usual. He swept an indifferent glance all around. His ice-cold voice rang out slowly. "Rest in place, we'll set off after 2 hours." Afterwards, he lowered his head and instructed several things to Su Luo. He told her to let the little divine dragon and the little fox protect her well. Afterwards, his figure disappeared and could not be seen. He left to search for the 7th challenge's passageway by himself. Nangong Luyun's strength was very powerful. Simultaneously, his perception was also extremely sharp. It was reasonable to say that after passing the 6th challenge, his mood should be relaxed. However, he could faintly feel a rather bad premonition, as if there was a time limit for passing these 9 challenges, although that master of the 9 different palace halls hadn't mentioned it beforehand. Nangong Luyun clenched his fists tightly. It was just his conjecture that there was a time limit for passing these 9 challenges. It was also just his guess that all the scores from the 9 challenges would be summed up. However, for a matter which concerned Su Luo's life and death, Nangong Luyun did not dare to be remiss in the slightest. Chapter 11:18. The 7th Challenge, 2. Nangong Luyun had personally set out. So very quickly, the passageway to the 7th challenge was found. After a short rest, the party then set out for the passageway. As they entered the teleportation array, everyone only felt an instant flashing by before they were pushed out of the teleportation array. When their eyes stabilized again, their surrounding environment had already gone through huge changes. If the roasting hot desert from the 6th challenge could be considered hell, then the current environment here could definitely be called heaven. This was a coastal beach. The beach had fine and soft sand, with coconut trees standing tall and erect. Then, further out, was the markless, blue-green waves of the sea. Azure seawater. A wide sea and open sky with no visible end in sight. Taking a deep breath, one could feel that this air refreshes the mind and moistened the heart and lungs, as if all their troubles had disappeared without a trace. This place, how can it be like this? Being stimulated by the thrill of the 6th challenge. After jumping out from the teleportation array, they had all taken up battle positions and were immediately dumbfounded. Such soft, fine sand. Such a beautiful ocean. Li Yaoyao took 2 steps forward with both hands extended. Her eyes were tightly closed as she took a deep breath. The expression on her face was of total bliss. Situ Ming followed after, keeping her close. This place, really strange. Su Luo's eyebrows knitted slightly. She lifted her eyes to meet Nangong Liuyun's. Nangong Liuyun nodded in agreement, yet his eyes were clear and cool. In front of absolute strength, everyone that tries to deceive people are just paper tigers. When Su Luo heard this, she immediately laughed and clutched his lean waist. You sure are arrogant. This is self-confidence, okay? You must believe in your man. Nangong Liuyun pinched her sparkling, translucent, snow-white and jade-like nose. Li Yaoyao hated the most to see these 2 people bantering flirtatiously. So, seeing this, she scoffed coldly and heavily. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. She turned her head away in a rage. What is that? Li Yaoyao pointed to a boulder in the distance which was about 7 meters tall and uttered her surprise. That boulder's entire body was snow-white, bearing the sun, standing for a long time, unmoving, by the seashore. On the boulder, there was a faint figure in white sitting and angling, giving the others a kind of immortal to the bone, a feeling of being exceedingly refined. Only, the distance was somewhat far. Additionally, he was seated with his back to them, so they couldn't see his appearance clearly. Let's go over and take a look. Nangong Liuyun picked up Su Luo and took the lead to go over. The group of people followed closely behind him. In less than the time it took to make a cup of tea, everyone had arrived at the side of that huge boulder. They were now close and could clearly see an immortal-like back view floating on the boulder. The outline of this person's back was clean and unusual. He seemed to be about 20-something years old, dressed in black clothing with luxurious patterns. His ink-black hair was tied up with a white, unadorned ribbon. Just looking at his figure from behind was able to hypnotize and captivate people. Don't know as to what sort of appearance he would have from the front. The group of people stopped 10 meters away from that mysterious man who was up ahead. None of them said a word, nor did they dare to disturb him rashly. After experiencing the life-and-death adventures of the 6th challenge, even Li Yaoyao had become a lot more cautious. Throughout this journey of charging through the challenges, the things they'd encountered were either arrays or magical beasts. They had yet to meet a real living person. The motionless as a mountain person before them seemed to have stood here since ancient times. The scenic landscape of the sea and mountain fused together with the man's body, giving off a strange feeling. Don't know how long had passed before the man, the fishing rod with the float attached to the string, suddenly sank down. Then, he lifted it up casually, and one could see a lively blue fish leaping and frisking about. Su Luo couldn't help but be shaken by shock. This fish was not at all an ordinary fish. If she hadn't guessed wrong, this blue fish was identical to the amethyst thorn fish and contained an abundance of spirit energy. Su Luo's gaze carried some suspicion as she looked towards Nangong Liuyun. Chapter 11:19. The 7th Challenge, 3. Nangong Liuyun nodded slightly. At that time, it was said that an amethyst thornfish was equivalent to a green-colored crystal stone. Then, the spirit energy this blue-colored fish contained must be an equivalent to a blue-colored crystal stone. How difficult was it to find a blue-colored crystal stone? So, how could a blue fish be so easily hooked? In a short while, Su Luo became more guarded against this mysterious man. That man leisurely reeled in the fish and placed it into a deep basket for fish at his side. Then, he slowly turned around. Everyone finally saw his powerful true appearance. One could see that he had thick, sharp eyebrows and bright star-like eyes. His appearance was like a waning moon shining brightly in the night sky, lustrous and alienating, yet could charm all living things. He was extremely dazzling. A modest nobleman, elegant as jade. These words appeared in Su Luo's mind. That gaze contained a shallow smile, faintly discernible as it swept across Su Luo's face. When it swept past, Su Luo clearly saw the hidden ridicule in his eyes. It seemed that this individual was not as gentle and harmless as he appeared. Contrary to expectations, he was somewhat two-faced and cunning. Inside, Su Luo secretly made this assessment. You guys can call me seventh young master. He cast the fishing line with the hook back into the ocean and said this line relaxedly with grace. The way he cast the fishing rod was full of beautiful lines, adept and vivid, also carrying a touch of leisurely indolence. Seventh young master, may I ask how to pass this seventh challenge? Is it to defeat you to pass? Li Yaoyao loudly asked. Defeat this young master? It was as if that seventh young master had heard the world's greatest joke. He glanced at Li Yaoyao as if looking at an idiot, and he said, Do you believe that I, this young master, can pulverize you with a single finger? Li Yaoyao met his gaze. In a split second, an unprecedented feeling of fear appeared in her heart. Li Yaoyao felt like her acupuncture point had been poked. Her entire person was as rigid as a statue. Chills ran down her spine and goosebumps appeared on her skin. This person. Was this frightening with just a single glance? Li Yaoyao lowered her eyes and did not dare to say even half a word more. I dislike fighting and killing the most. The seventh young master retracted his gaze, unhurriedly casting a glance at Su Luo. This girl's luck isn't bad. To think that you're able to come all the way to the seventh challenge. Seventh young master, you flatter me. Su Luo smiled shallowly, her expression indifferent. Don't know. With this challenge, what sort of game rules will seventh young master set? If it was a competition to fish for blue-colored fish, a crafty expression flashed through Su Luo's eyes. She was able to fish that many amethyst-thorned fish. How could she not hook these blue-colored fish? However, luck didn't stand completely on Su Luo's side. Rules of the game? Seventh young master's eyes lit up slightly. That's right. This challenge has this young master in control, which means I can draw up the rules of the game. Girl, seeing as you hit it off so well with this young master, how about we play an intelligence quiz for this challenge? Intelligence quiz? Wasn't it to hook blue-colored fish? Su Luo was slightly disappointed. However, currently, Su Luo's body was weak and wasn't suitable to use force. If they were to play an intelligence quiz, then this seventh young master was truly biased towards helping her. It's just that. Su Luo tilted her head and sized up this seemingly gentle, but was in fact two-faced and cunning seventh young master. Was he truly that easy to get along with? Right when Su Luo was being suspicious, Nangong Luyun gave a faint cold snort. Intelligence quiz is not bad either. Though, don't know what will happen if we answer correctly, and what will happen if we can't answer. Just now, Nangong Luyun had secretly tested out this seventh young master. The opponent's strength was profoundly mysterious. It was difficult to tell who was stronger compared to Grandmaster Rong Yun. Even if Nangong Luyun went all out, he might not be able to even wound the other side. Let alone to say during the sixth challenge, his mind had suffered a little injury, and he was not fully recovered. If he could refrain from fighting, then naturally, it was better not to fight. Chapter 11:20, The Seventh Challenge, 4. Seeing Nangong Luyun taking over the conversation, Su Luo stood quietly by his side. She smiled as she looked at him, stating that she would follow him blindly. Oh, the man sings and the woman follows. You guys are well matched. The seventh young master smiled faintly and casually said, This intelligence quiz naturally, it is not that much fun. Let's do this by the number of people. Each of you'll come up to answer the question one by one. If you answer correctly, I'll consider that you've passed this seventh challenge. If you answer wrongly, what will happen if we give the wrong answer? Su Luo asked with a faint smile. If the answer is wrong, then you'll have to leave behind one item you are carrying as a souvenir for this young master. The seventh young master said in a manner that was neither urgent nor slow. Only leave behind one item we're currently carrying will be fine. Li Yaoyao followed closely with this question. The seventh young master shot her a smiling glance that was not quite a smile and repeated it again, As long as you guys leave behind one item you're currently carrying is fine. Then fine, I'll bet. Li Yaoyao said loudly. Although she wasn't carrying a lot of things, but she could scrounge up a few items. Otherwise, she could always just leave behind her bracelet. That's what Li Yaoyao was thinking in her mind. Su Luo, however, frowned slightly. She kept feeling that the matter wasn't as simple as Li Yaoyao thought. Just when she was about to say something, seventh young master then added another sentence. As for the time it takes to answer the question, it'll be based on how long it takes for this young master to catch a fish. This isn't fair. Li Yaoyao protested loudly. Everyone knew that the time it took to catch a fish wasn't fixed. Sometimes, one wasn't able to catch a fish for a long time. Other times, one could catch several fishes within several breaths' time. Luck is also a part of one's strengths. Seventh young master cast a cold glance at her. Unfair? Then this young master will toss you into the sea. Do you think that's unfair? When Su Luo heard what was said, she couldn't help but shake her head secretly. Sometimes, this seventh young master appeared to have a graceful and noble air, but sometimes he was completely unreasonable. Really made it hard for people to see through him. This young master is here to inform you guys, and not here to seek your opinions. This seventh young master's expression grew cold as he pointed at Li Yaoyao. You, come out. This first question will ask you to answer. Li Yaoyao really wanted to protest, because seventh young master's fishing hook had already been in the water for a long time, which meant that all the time they'd spent talking earlier had wasted her time to answer the question. This was just too unfair. However, when Li Yaoyao's gaze encountered the seventh young master's, her pupils immediately shrank and she did not dare say even half a sentence more. She very much believed that if she dared to raise any objections, this seventh young master, who lacked any tender protective feelings for the fairer sex, would definitely throw her into the sea. Seventh young master, please ask your question. The only thing Li Yaoyao could do was to urge this living Yama, king of hell, to ask the question without delay. So, she would have just a little more time to answer the question. However, seventh young master didn't even give her this little bit of hope. She could only watch as seventh young master gazed out into the distance and creased his eyebrows slightly. He appeared to be in deep thought about what question he should give her. Li Yaoyao nervously stared at that float on the surface of that tranquil sea, afraid that that float would sink from being bitten by a fish. Right when Li Yaoyao was nervous to the extreme, the angel-faced but evil-hearted seventh young master finally asked the question. Considering you're the first customer after I've opened the shop, this first question, I'll make it a bit easier. The seventh young master fished neither urgently nor slowly, and leisurely throughout this sentence. Does Little White look a lot like his elder brother? Guess the proverb. Does Little White look a lot like his elder brother? What sort of topic was this? Completely no way to come up with an answer. Originally, Li Yaoyao had thought that the topic would be on the subject of historical and classical texts, or cultivation methods. If it was like that, she would have a superior advantage over Su Luo. Chapter 11:21. The seventh challenge, 5. Originally, she was still immeasurably self-satisfied. Who knew that this seventh young master would suddenly come up with this? What, Little White looks like his elder brother, and she needed to come up with a proverb. This follows what and where? The Jade Lake's fairy, who always boasted herself as a talented girl, was immediately stupefied. She completely couldn't think of what the answer could be. Seventh young master, there seems to be a problem with this topic? Li Yaoyao had racked her brains for a long time and still came up with nothing. She could only summon her courage and weakly ask. The moment she said this, seventh young master was immediately unhappy. He shot her a cold glance. Considering that you're the first one to answer the question, this time, I'll spare you for questioning this young master. Next time, humph humph. Those two heavy scoffs scared Li Yaoyao until her complexion became pale. She didn't dare say half a sentence more. For a moment, everyone's gazes was all focused on Li Yaoyao's body. They also followed after her and started to rack their brains, asking themselves honestly, if they were in Li Yaoyao's position, they might not be much better than her. Because this topic, they also didn't know it either. However, the corners of Su Luo's mouth still held a trace of that dimpled, shallow smile, self-confident and nonchalant. In the beginning, Su Luo had the same thought as Li Yaoyao. She thought that this seventh young master would give questions related to the topic of cultivation. However, she absolutely never expected that this mysterious seventh young master, with a gentle outward appearance, would actually have this crafty side to him. He clearly gave a question to make one's mind spin. This sort of topic, if it was brought up in the time period of Su Luo's previous life, even an ordinary primary school kid would be able to answer it clearly and logically. However, to suddenly appear in this different world immediately stumped everyone. However, Su Luo lifted up her eyes to look at Nangong Luyun. Nangong Liuyun's sharp brows and deep eyes with a gaze that was like bright as stars. He had an expression of great self-confidence and being in high spirits. Su Luo knew that considering Nangong Liuyun's wisdom and intelligence, it was impossible for him not to guess the answer. However, Nangong Liuyun's gaze when looking at Su Luo, although it seemed confident, couldn't help but carry a trace of worry. Su Luo knew what he was worrying about. Quietly, she grasped Nangong Liuyun's hand and drew on the center of his palm. After she finished writing, the two people shared a mutual smile, with the smile in their eyes one that only the two of them understood. Nangong Luyun was beaming with joy. His Luo Luo had always been an intelligent one. Indeed, he didn't need to worry too much about her. The two of them had already guessed it. However, the main character on the scene was still at a loss and helpless. At this moment, an extremely panicked and fearful expression appeared on Li Yaoyao's face, because until now, she still completely lacked any idea of the answer. Moreover, seventh young master wouldn't allow her to ask another question. What to do? In the end, what should she do? Could it be that she really must admit defeat? Li Yaoyao's heart was restless, and her gaze wandered and looked towards Situ Ming and the others. However, it just so happened that Situ Ming's comprehension and cultivation wasn't bad, but with regards to brain twisters, he simply couldn't do it. He was also anxious, so anxious that sweat seeped out continuously from his forehead. However, the more anxious he was, the more he couldn't think of an answer. Li Yaoyao's gaze slowly swept by Situ Ming's face. When she met Su Luo's gaze and saw the smile in Su Luo's eyes, Li Yaoyao got so angry, she nearly jumped up. However, under this kind of situation, she could only grit her teeth and bear it. Finally, her gaze stopped on Nangong Liuyun's body. She gazed deeply at Nangong Luyun with eyes full of deep emotion and expectation. Third senior brother had always been smart. There simply wasn't anything in this world that would stump him. He had definitely thought of an answer. Li Yaoyao's gaze stuck to Nangong Luyun. With tearful eyes, she was clearly pitiful, and paired up with her dainty complexion, it really induced a person's pity. Chapter 11:22. The Seventh Challenge, 6. If it was an ordinary male, how could he resist her delicateness? At this moment, seventh young master smiled faintly. He casually threw a glance at Nangong Luyun and said an indifferent sentence. If someone helps you to answer the question, no problem. However, regardless of whether the answer is right or wrong, the person helping to answer the question has to accept a penalty. Seventh young master smiled a smile that wasn't a smile as he looked at Nangong Luyun. Nangong Luyun's deep pitch-black ink-like eyes shot a glance at seventh young master. His gaze was cold like thousand-year-old ice, along with an imposing murderous aura that made people tremble with fear. Even this seventh young master, whose strength was a profound mystery, his heart couldn't help but be slightly startled. He was an extraordinary person. His evaluation of Nangong Luyun was already pretty high. Now, seventh young master's impression of him improved even more. As a worldly intermediary, Nangong Luyun was able to make him feel fear. Once this person matured, just how frightening would he be then? Seventh young master smiled faintly at Nangong Luyun. Then, his gaze returned to pay attention to the fishing rod in his hands. Suddenly the float in the water sank down slightly. This indicated that a fish had taken the bait. Seventh young master looked towards Li Yaoyao and smiled faintly as he said a sentence in reminder. The time is almost up. Wasn't that precisely how it was? All he needed to do was to raise up the fishing rod in his hands, and it would represent that her time was up. Third senior brother. Li Yaoyao was so anxious that she really cried. Su Luo sneered at her, the corners of her lips curling up coldly. Li Yaoyao, if Nangong Luyun answers the question for you, regardless of whether he can answer, the one who receives the punishment will be him. How can you be so selfish? These unsympathetic words were ice-cold and cruel. However, it enlightened Li Yaoyao and woke her up from her excessive expectations. Even if Nangong Luyun wasn't under penalty, he still wouldn't speak out to remind her, let alone with this kind of restriction now in place. Seventh young master's gaze wandered back and forth between Su Luo and Li Yaoyao. Suddenly, he smiled slyly. His hand moved and a blue fish appeared, caught on his fishing rod. The blue fish leaped about, as lively as ever, droplets of water tumbling down from its body continuously. You've lost. Seventh young master's finger moved slightly, and that blue fish was disconnected from the hook and dropped into the dark gold-colored fish basket. Li Yaoyao's face immediately became deathly gray and stood rigid to the spot. She opened her mouth, but with a glare from seventh young master, she didn't dare to say even half a word. I've lost. Li Yaoyao's gaze dropped down weakly. She felt that as long as she put on a pitiful appearance, even if seventh young master wanted to penalize her, he wouldn't do it heavily. Then, you know what to do, right? Seventh young master frowned somewhat impatiently. I know. Li Yaoyao bit her teeth and weakly pulled down the bracelet on her right hand and handed it over. Seventh young master's complexion was unexpected. What's the meaning of this? This sentence already contained a thread of anger. Li Yaoyao's heart was somewhat apprehensive, however, she still summoned her courage to say, this heart-penetrating bracelet can absorb the spiritual energy in the surroundings for the wearer's use. It's a second-to-none treasure for cultivation. This is already my utmost precious possession. Now, I'm leaving it for you. Earlier, seventh young master had already said, if they lost, they would leave behind an item on their body. Now, she was leaving behind the heart-penetrating bracelet she deemed as a treasure. It ought to be enough, right? Li Yaoyao thought of this and her heart gained more confidence. She raised her eyes to look towards seventh young master. Seventh young master was somewhat stupefied for a moment, then after, he snapped out of it, looking at her as if looking at an idiot. He pointed at that heart-penetrating bracelet with a smile that wasn't a smile. This is the most precious item on your body? Uh-huh. Li Yaoyao nodded seriously. This time, she really wasn't lying. Chapter 11:23. The Seventh Challenge. 7. However, seventh young master's expression suddenly changed. Are you really foolish or faking being foolish? Seventh young master was rather curious. Li Yaoyao had a question mark across her entire face. Seventh young master couldn't help but take her as an idiot and carefully explained. What this young master is referring to as the things on your body, for example, his fair as jade finger, pointed at Li Yaoyao's wrist, or such as following that, he pointed to Li Yaoyao's leg. Li Yaoyao stared blankly. Immediately after, she returned to her senses and couldn't help but to cry out loud in alarm. No, no, no. She finally understood. This seventh young master's so-called leave behind an item on her body wasn't indicating something else. Rather, it pointed to her hand or leg. How can this be possible? Li Yaoyao felt that she was about to be scared senseless. She turned around and immediately ran towards Situ Ming's direction. Under this kind of circumstances, the only person who would save her was second senior brother. Second senior brother, save me. With wide strides, Li Yaoyao ran very quickly. Situ Ming's reaction wasn't slow either. He flipped his hand to form seals and immediately smashed it towards seventh young master's face. How could his precious Yaoyao have her hand or leg chopped off? Even if you kill him, he would never allow something like this to happen. However, something that made Situ Ming spit out blood happened. That palm seal he shot out was frozen in mid-air, motionless, unable to advance nor retreat. Situ Ming's complexion became very unsightly. He had known since earlier that seventh young master was very powerful. His strength was greater than his by more than one notch. However, to think he was this powerful, it was really unimaginable. A cold chill slowly crawled up from the soles of Situ Ming's feet to his back. He had a very ominous premonition. Seventh young master stood with his hands behind his back and a smile on his face. He watched Situ Ming with a smile that was not quite a smile. His eyes flickered as if he was looking at an idiot. Suddenly, that palm seal, which had initially been frozen, moved. One could see it was as if it had intelligence. It flipped over rapidly and made a U-turn. Unexpectedly, it then shot straight towards Li Yaoyao. Right at this moment, Li Yaoyao was hiding in Situ Ming's embrace. Both of her arms were wrapped tightly around Situ Ming's neck. That palm seal seemed to have grown eyes. With a whoosh sound, it flashed past like a ray of light. Ah! Just at this moment, a desperate, painful cry exploded from Li Yaoyao's mouth. One only saw her right wrist was broken apart from the base of her hand. Her hand was actually severed by that palm seal Situ Ming had personally sent out. At this moment, blood was gushing out from Li Yaoyao's wrist like a spring, spraying out onto the ground. In a moment, her face, her remnant fairy-styled skirt, and the ground were all mottled with blood. The strong smell of blood permeated through the air. The surroundings became very quiet. It was so quiet that they could clearly hear the sound of each other's heartbeat. No one could have imagined that the soft-spoken and smiling seventh young master would be this ruthless when he took action. While he was speaking in a friendly tone, Li Yaoyao's wrist was snapped off from the base of her hand and cracked into fragments. Everyone's gaze uniformly looked towards seventh young master. At this moment, his expression was as tranquil as jade, gentle, pure, and holy, like he was a god who had descended into the human world. He was so noble, not a bit of dust contaminated him. Li Yaoyao's blood-curdling screech lingered on, but this seventh young master continued to smile like nothing had happened. You. The second question. Seventh young master cast a glance at Situ Ming. Currently, Situ Ming's vision was a sheet of red. He was burning with rage, about to explode at any moment. However, he was very clear about what sort of conclusion it would be if he was to rush up now. With a mere wave of his sleeve, seventh young master could turn Situ Ming into ashes. Second senior brother, just for my sake, you mustn't be rash. Li Yaoyao sobbed spasmodically as she pleaded in a low voice. Chapter 11:24, The Seventh Challenge, 8. At this moment, she had already lost a hand. If Situ Ming impulsively ran up to seventh young master, that's like courting death. Then, what should she do in the future on this road? Although Li Yaoyao really hated the seventh young master and wished she could eat his flesh and suck his blood, however, she still understood the principle that a wise man submits to circumstances. Consequently, she was willing to go soothe Situ Ming. The fists at Situ Ming's side were clenched so tight that they made endless cracking sounds. It could clearly be seen how hard he worked to forbear it. Seventh young master's expression was as before. It remained unmoved. It's still that question from just now. If you can't answer, chop off your own right arm. Seventh young master indifferently said this sentence, but his attention had shifted to the fishing rod. He concentrated on his fishing. It was still that question from just now? Situ Ming was immediately stumped. That question from just now, he completely didn't know. If he had known, even risking the danger of being penalized, he would still have told Li Yaoyao and wouldn't have let her suffer that kind of bitterness. Time passed in minutes and seconds. The surroundings were dreadfully quiet. Little White looks a lot like his elder brother. Situ Ming sucked in a deep breath to calm himself down. Just now, all of his thoughts was worried about Li Yaoyao, therefore, he didn't think deeply on this topic. But now, he emptied his mind and let his knowledge diffuse, quickly working on this problem. Situ Ming, who was able to raise above a countless number of people, he couldn't possibly be an idiot. Looks a lot. Little White. Big White. Looks a lot like Big White, Situ Ming muttered to himself. Just when Situ Ming muttered, looks a lot like Big White, Bai Chenying's eyes suddenly lit up. In the time it took for a flint to light a fire, he had already guessed the answer. At this moment, Bei Qining and Situ Ming had the same urgency. Situ Ming urgently wanted to guess the answer to the riddle, while Bei Qining was praying that he wouldn't guess it. In this way, the next person's turn would be one among the four of them left. Don't guess it, don't guess it, don't guess it. Bei Qining almost waved his fist as if swaying to a beat. Just at this pivotal moment, the float on the fishing line of the fishing rod suddenly sunk. This indicated a fish having taken the bait. Situ Ming was so anxious that a drop of cold sweat emerged from his forehead. After all, if he couldn't guess it, then he would lose a hand or foot, completely without leeway to talk it over. Just at this moment, in the final breath, suddenly, something flashed through Situ Ming's mind, and he loudly called, "The whole truth is revealed." The answer is the whole truth is revealed. Little White looks a lot like his elder brother. Answer with a proverb. Wasn't it just the truth? Really looks like Big White a one? Once Situ Ming said the answer, the remaining several people suddenly realized. No one would have expected that the answer would be so simple. So long as their minds turned a little bit and changed their thinking, they would be able to get the answer. In fact, the mind making a sudden turn was like this, seeing the heavenly steed soaring across the sky. But as long as someone said the answer, everyone would have a feeling of sudden revelation. Bei Qining regretted so much that he glared at Situ Ming, regretting to the point that his teeth itched. At this moment, Liao Yao also looked at Situ Ming with an extremely complicated gaze. For such a minor topic, she lost her right wrist. However, second senior brother was able to answer it. Liao Yao looked at Situ Ming's pair of arms that came out unscathed. Her feelings were extremely complicated. She wanted to smile, wanted to congratulate second senior brother. Yet, when she opened her mouth, she was unable to say a word. Liao Yao bit her lower lip. Did second senior brother really not know in the beginning, or did he deliberately not tell her? If he had told her earlier, her right wrist wouldn't be. Seeing that arm with blood flowing out with gurgling sounds, that arm completely missing a palm. A trace of malicious light flashed through Liao Yao's eyes. Once the seed of doubt was buried, it would germinate by itself. 1. The truth really looks like Big White Ah. This is actually a play on how the word sounds, which I translated as the truth, although the character is off by one from the exact sounding words, which translated to really looks like. Translate as Big White, but could also mean revealed. The Chinese proverb is, which means the whole truth is revealed. Chapter 11:25, the 7th challenge, 9, third question. You, come up. 7th young master pointed in passing, and pointed at Bei Qining. Su Luo's heart tensed. Liao Yao's hand was removed at the wrist. She didn't care, but if Bei Qining had an accident. But Bei Qining had always been clever, he might not necessarily be unable to answer it. Su Luo said secretly in her heart. Bei Qining took a few steps forward to arrive before 7th young master. His expression was unperturbed, full of self-confidence. One couldn't see a thread of nervousness in his features and mood. He even seemed to be eager to give it a try. That's right, he was a progeny from an aristocratic family, a proud son of heaven. A character that was clever, wise, and far-sighted. Maybe she was over-worrying about nothing. Su Luo secretly laughed in her heart at her concern and confusion. The 7th young master's attention had always been on the fishing rod. He raised his eyes and cast a glance. As his gaze swept over Su Luo, a thread of ridicule flashed in his eyes. Su Luo's brows wrinkled. Don't know whether it was her misconception. She always felt as if this 7th young master seemed to know her. Who was this person, in the end? Just when Su Luo still remained perplexed despite much thought, 7th young master had already come up with a question. For the sake of that girl, I'll give you a simple question. 7th young master's tone was faint as if absent-minded. For the sake of that girl? Which girl? It was not only Bei Qining who was puzzled. Everyone else was also puzzled. If there was such a girl that could plead for 7th young master to give an easier question, then wouldn't the first part of this challenge be much easier to pass? However, faced with 7th young master's profoundly mysterious, deep eyes, no one dared to ask who that girl was. Nangong Liuyun's hand that was holding Su Luo's tightened. Just now, seventh young master had cast several seemingly accidental glances at Su Luo. Other people might not understand, but how could Nangong Liuyun, who always had his attention on Su Luo, not know? That girl the seventh young master was referring to, except for Luo Luo, there was no other. Nangong Liuyun's strong arm made a loop, then, in an overbearing manner, confined Su Luo to his chest. The seventh young master, with a ghost of a smile, raised an eyebrow and was non-committal. Nangong Liuyun's forehead wrinkled slightly, however, since the other side made no move. He also wouldn't foolishly open his mouth first. If it was anyone else, seventh young master usually would be indifferent, but towards Nangong Liuyun, with his high degree of cultivation, he inevitably would still be somewhat cautious. A nobleman must have the grace and beauty of an adult. To break apart a mated pair was a matter that only her parents had the right to do so. He would not be so crooked to be that vile person. Seventh young master took back his dispersed train of thought and unhurriedly told Beichening his question. There is a bridge that can only take 80 kilograms in weight, otherwise it'll cave in. Now, there is a person weighing 75 kilograms. He must carry 2 balls each weighing 6 kilograms to cross the bridge. Without using any tools, he brought over the 2 balls across the bridge in one trip. Then, how did he cross the bridge? After Beichening finished listening, a huge question mark flickered over his forehead. How did he carry the overweight 2 balls over in one trip? Beichening rubbed his head. There was simply no way to do it. If you carried both over, then wouldn't the bridge just collapse? Time passed in minutes and seconds. Beichening's forehead gave off a trace of cold sweat. He subconsciously looked towards Su Luo. Su Luo, on the sly, made a movement of tossing a ball up and down. In a flash, Beichening's eyes lit up. He also wasn't stupid. With only a glance, he saw Su Luo's hint. Such a simple topic, how could he be tied up by a fixed mindset? Beichening heavily slapped his head and loudly reported. The answer is to toss one ball, and waiting for the moment it falls to throw the other. This way, the bridge won't cave in. The answer is complete. He was clearly siding with her. Thus, Luo Haochen, as a wise man that submitted to circumstances, also followed to say a sentence. We also didn't see it. Li Yaoyao, because of this, was tied up with anger. She very fiercely sent a glare at Luo Haochen, her hand continuously making movements of throwing a ball. Just now, Su Luo made this kind of movements. This way of tossing a ball up and down. Don't tell me this still isn't considered reminding him? Li Yaoyao was immensely proud of herself. This time, the proof was conclusive. Seventh young master couldn't side with her under so many staring eyes, right? Seventh young master was all smiles as he turned his gaze to Su Luo. Someone accused you of cheating. What do you say? His voice was gentle and soft, with unknown meaning. I protest. I protest against Jade Lake's Fairy's malicious slander and defamation of me. Su Luo, with righteous indignation, waved her fist. Seventh young master was so amused by Su Luo's exaggerated appearance that he broke into laughter. Li Yaoyao's heart was so furious, because the person that was in charge, how could seventh young master be so openly biased? She had thought to remind him several sentences, but thinking of seventh young master's expression that made people apprehensive and terrified, she didn't dare to speak again. Chapter 11:27. The Seventh Challenge, 11. Seventh young master's eyes contained a smile, and said to Su Luo, but you really did make that movement, You say, how did the other person slander you? Yeah, did it. It seems seventh young master wasn't that biased. Li Yaoyao inevitably started to be proud of herself once again. Who would have thought? Su Luo put on an appearance of having been wronged. Seventh young master, I am being wrongly accused. Just now, it was too hot. I was merely fanning myself. How did it get tarnished to become cheating? Fanning herself? Seventh young master's smile was odd. Li Yaoyao was thoroughly stupefied. Ziyin and the others were excited again, because fanning herself and the movement of tossing a ball up and down was naturally identical. Also, only Su Luo's kind, with such a clever mind, could react this quickly. But Li Yaoyao still wasn't resigned. She loudly shouted, "Impossible! You were clearly cheating. Cheating!" Seventh young master's face hardened. His ice-cold eyes were like frost. Slandering another adds another level to the crime. Seeing that you've already lost your wrist, I'll first forgive you for now, but just this once. Humph. Couldn't help but say, seventh young master's hardened face appearance could really scare people. In any case, in that split second, Li Yaoyao was scared to the point of foolishly standing on the spot and keeping quiet out of fear. Turning around, Li Yaoyao very fiercely glared at Su Luo. Her fists were tightly clenched, hating to the point of gnashing her teeth. Su Luo's eyes shone, immensely proud of herself. She cast a provocative glance at her. "You." Li Yaoyao was so angry that she almost spit out some blood. She completely didn't anticipate that after Su Luo cheated, she would still be so arrogant. Su Luo raised her chin and looked at her with a ghost of a smile with far-reaching meaning in her eyes. "Su Luo, I'll remember you." Li Yaoyao, panting with rage, threw out a sentence to save face. She turned around and left with large strides. From the strength in her strides, she was really not angered lightly by Su Luo. "Li Yaoyao, I'll also remember you." When Li Yaoyao passed by Bai Qinying's side, he extended out a foot. The pathetic Jade Lake's fairy, still thinking of ways to murder Su Luo in her head, completely wasn't paying attention to her feet. Consequently, thump, sound rang out. The Jade Lake's fairy, who placed herself above the common people, directly fell flat on her face. "Bai Qinying!" Li Yaoyao shrewishly shouted in anger. A tiger which landed in flatland was cheated by a dog, won. She couldn't win against Su Luo, then forget it. Now, even Bai Qinying was bullying her. Bai Qinying smilingly looked at her. "Jade Lake's fairy, seeing you look at me so excitedly, have I grown to be that handsome?" Li Yaoyao's complexion was red through and through. However, she couldn't win a quarrel with Bai Qinying and couldn't win a fight against him. In the end, she could only look at Situ Ming with an appeal for help, second senior brother. Not waiting for Situ Ming to speak, Bai Qinying sneeringly looked at Situ Ming with naked ridicule in his eyes. The words were at the tip of Situ Ming's tongue. Ultimately, he only sighed, "Yaoyao." Seventh young master indifferently swept them a glance. He put the fish he had hooked into the fish basket and then stretched a bit. "Enough. You passed this challenge. Next one." This time, he didn't designate who was next. All depended on their own initiative. Ziyin looked at Su Luo, and Su Luo nodded her head. As a result, Ziyin then took a step forward. "I'll go." Seventh young master's gaze returned from Ziyin's body to Su Luo. After making a circle, he then nodded his head. "A pretty little lady losing her wrist really doesn't look so good. How about this? This young master will give you a simple question." Once these words were said, Li Yaoyao had the desire to bite seventh young master to death. What was called a pretty little lady losing her wrist really doesn't look so good. Don't tell me she wasn't prettier than Ziyin? Unfair. There were hidden secrets. Li Yaoyao almost went insane from rage. 1. A possible meaning for the proverb. A man who loses position and influence may be subjected to a lot of indignity. Chapter 11:28. The Seventh Challenge. 12. Thank you, Seventh Young Master. Ziyin's eyes sparkled with excitement. "The person you ought to thank is not this young master." Seventh Young Master cast a glance at Su Luo with ghost of a smile and then directly asked the question. "The fish basket has 6 fish. Every one of the 6 children gets 1 fish. However, there is still 1 left in the basket. Why?" This question could be said to be extremely simple. With a slight move of the mind, one could easily figure it out. However, Su Luo looked at Ziyin, deeply concerned. As long as she didn't panic and think it through slowly, she absolutely can think of the answer. Just now, having been pointed out by Li Yaoyao that she cheated, although Seventh Young Master didn't blame her, but for the time being, Su Luo also couldn't make small cheating movements again. Seventh young master calmly continued to fish. Ziyin bowed her head and muttered to herself, 6 fish, 6 people to divide it. Still had one left? How could there be one extra? Ziyin cocked her head and carefully thought. Li Yaoyao's gaze was like a sharp sword, closely staring at Su Luo. If Su Luo dared to hint half a word again, Li Yaoyao absolutely would expose her. Su Luo raised an eyebrow at Li Yaoyao with not quite a smile. This action of Li Yaoyao's unintentionally already made it clear that she firmly believed Su Luo had guessed the answer. It also made clear that in her heart, she regarded Su Luo highly. Li Yaoyao heavily snorted, knowing perfectly well Su Luo was taunting her, yet she still didn't move away her gaze. I thought of it. Ziyin slapped her forehead, so excited that she nearly jumped up. There isn't an extra fish, rather, that fish and the basket were passed to the last child. Luo, what I said is correct, right? Under Ziyin's excitement, she actually turned her head to ask Su Luo if she was right or not. Su Luo smilingly nodded her head and made congratulating movements. Seventh young master touched his nose. Enough, you can withdraw. Great ah. Ziyin, with her head high and her chest out, walked to Su Luo's side before stopping to stand still. She provocatively snorted at Li Yaoyao. Li Yaoyao, what are you staring at Luo for? Don't tell me your heart firmly believes that Luo could answer it? Oh, saying it like this, you admit that Luo is a lot smarter than you? These words immediately choked off Li Yaoyao. Hateful. Li Yaoyao waved her fist, wishing she could rush up and slap Ziyin's face several times. Only, it was a pity, not to mention that she couldn't beat Ziyin. Even this matter of slapping her face, she, who had no palm, also basically couldn't do it. At the moment, this party of 8 people had already passed half of the challenges. Among their 4, only Li Yaoyao had her wrist cut off. This made Li Yaoyao's mental state severely imbalanced. Enough. Next one. Seventh young master snorted lightly. His time was very precious. Elder brother, you go? Luo Die pushed Luo Haochen. Luo Haochen's figure didn't budge an inch. Very clearly, he wasn't very willing to stand out at this moment. He glanced at Luo Die with a complicated expression, a deep shadow in his eyes, hiding a thread of rage. Seventh young master's slender finger pointed towards Luo Haochen. Then you, come. Luo Haochen's heart was resentful. He pushed away Luo Die and came forward with a cold face. How could he not understand the small calculations in Luo Die's heart? She not only wanted him to answer first, if he couldn't answer it, the time she could ponder over it would accordingly also be longer. These methods, if used on others, then fine, but against all reason, it was used on him, this elder brother. Regardless of how angry Luo Haochen was, he still had to answer his question. Seventh young master snorted, pretending it was accidental. Just now, the 2 questions were all answered correctly. Really loses my face this time. It'll be a question that's a bit deeper. Having heard what was said, Luo Haochen's complexion immediately paled. Chapter 11:29. The 7th Challenge, 13. What's a good question I should ask? Seventh young master muttered half to himself before he unhurriedly said, there is a small round hole with a diameter of 1 centimeter, and an object with a volume of 100 cubic meters can still smoothly pass through this small hole. Then, what is this object? Luo Haochen was immediately stupefied. Such a small hole, how could it possibly pass through? Seventh young master, smiling, cast him a glance and then, in passing, lifted up a blue-colored fish. Seeing this, he couldn't help but sigh on behalf of Luo Haochen. Your luck as a person is really bad. Clearly, it can be seen that your character isn't good on a daily basis. At this moment, Luo Haochen's whole head was dizzy. He still hadn't started to ponder it. How could a blue-colored fish be fished up? This was unfair. He wanted to shout in protest, but recalling seventh young master's tyranny and cruelty, he secretly shivered. Cut off your hand or your foot. If you do it yourself, you can still choose. Seventh young master said in a tone as if he had mercy. Luo Haochen's complexion was very red. He really was suffering bitterly and could not say it. Ultimately, he clenched his teeth, a very severe, ruthless light flashing through his eyes. Afterwards, he waved his knife to chop off his left wrist. The blood from his left hand would shock people. It rolled in a circle on the ground before falling at the soles of seventh young master's feet. Luo Haochen's right hand pushed the pressure points on his left arm in succession. Then, he sprinkled some white medical powder on it. That blood gushing out was immediately stopped. Like seventh young master said, if he did it himself, he still had a choice. If he made seventh young master do it, if he cut off his leg or right hand, then, for the challenges ahead, he might as well commit suicide and forget about it. Besides, Apothecary Long had the rebirth of Flesh Pill. The rebirth of Flesh Pill could regrow his hand at the wrist. This point was already confirmed. According to Luoyu Palace Hall's might, they could at least obtain one. After Luo Haochen withdrew, seventh young master casually pointed to Luo Die. "It's your turn?" Luo Die was momentarily at a loss, but very quickly, she returned to her senses. She hadn't even begun to ponder over this topic. Luo Die bowed her head and quickly pondered. However, don't know if it was because the two siblings were especially unlucky or if seventh young master deliberately targeted them. Without waiting for Luo Die to think for a few seconds, splashed, a burst of the sound of water came. Seventh young master once again pulled up a lively blue-colored fish. Seeing that blue-colored fish unceasingly struggling in midair, Luo Die's eyes were opened so wide that they were perfectly round. Disbelief was all over her face. How could it be like this? She still hadn't started to think about it. How did he catch another fish again? Seventh young master. This isn't right. Can't be like this. Luo Die was so scared that she almost cried. Seventh young master raised his eyebrow slightly. This isn't right? Your speed in fishing is too quick. There simply isn't time to think, whose mind could turn this quickly? Luo Die said with a sobbing voice. Wait a bit, and I'll let you see how another person's brain would turn so quickly. Now, seventh young master waved his hand. You want to do it yourself, or have this young master do it? This thing must certainly remain behind. Luo Die trembled from head to toe, continuously retreating backwards. If it was possible for her not to lose a hand, she was really scared. Seventh young master was too lazy to waste more words with her. With a wave of his hand, a kacha sound rang out, and Luo Die's right hand was directly cut off at the wrist. Afterwards, seventh young master turned around to beckon at Su Luo. Girl, you come? For addressing Su Luo, seventh young master had already unwittingly called her girl. At the same time, Nangong Luyan also gave Su Luo a push. You go first? This question wasn't that difficult. Based on Su Luo's intelligence, she could definitely pass. It is a thing. Compared to the seventh young master, you are not a thing, If Su Luo hadn't given an explanation, it was still good, but after this explanation, seventh young master's face turned even redder. Loathsome girl, looking for a beating? Humph. Seventh young master slapped Su Luo's head in feigned anger. Su Luo stuck her tongue out. Sorry, but isn't it because you couldn't understand it after some thought? I just helped out to explain a little. You, as a very distinguished person, should be very magnanimous. You wouldn't get mad, right? I'm just making an analogy. If seventh young master got mad, then he wouldn't be a very distinguished person that was very magnanimous. This girl, although she spoke fast, but every sentence had a deep meaning. This made it that even if he wanted to get angry, he had no righteous reason to be angry. She really was a treacherous, crafty, two-faced and clever girl. Seventh young master scoffed. A woman's heart is with her husband. Ancient truth didn't deceive me. Forget it. I'll forgive you for now. This account, I can get it back from other people. Seventh young master flung his sleeves and cast a cold sidelong glance at Nangong Luyun. There still is another verse. If it is similarly inappropriate, don't even think about keeping that right arm of yours. In seventh young master's opinion, Luo girl becoming this two-faced was definitely because proximity influenced her. She was led astray by this guy surnamed Nangong. Su Luo rubbed her eyes in disbelief. Why did she feel as if he was too afraid of being questioned by her, so he had fled the scene? Don't tell me you want him to stay? Nangong Luyun knocked on her forehead. Su Luo wanted to say something but then hesitated. This seventh young master gave her a strange feeling, as if he knew her life's experiences. Consequently, Su Luo wanted to pull him to a stop and question him after the match. Even if she couldn't get any answers, she could always probe out a thing or two. Didn't expect that he would slip away this quickly. But no matter what, they had finally passed the seventh challenge safely. What about the scores and rewards for this challenge? Ziyin asked, after seemingly waking up from a nap. Su Luo shook her head. Seventh young master had run away so quickly. Could it be that he took the reward for himself? Su Luo had really guessed correctly half of the facts. Seventh young master was afraid of Su Luo's questions, so he fled very quickly. As a result, he also forgot to give Su Luo and them their reward. What a pity. Ziyin sighed. The reward for every challenge was very alluring. The further back the challenges, the better the rewards. Now, they actually lost the rewards for this challenge. It truly was a pity. What poor Su Luo didn't know was that the reward for the seventh challenge was closely related to the eighth challenge. Chapter 1133, The Underground Tomb, 1. However, it was not all bad. At least they got their points. Everybody got 50 points each. This means that Su Luo and Nangong Luyin together got 100 points. Ziyin and Beichening also got the same. Li Yaoyao and Situ Ming's group got 50 points and the Luo siblings got 0. They had finally passed the seventh challenge safely. Following this, they would try to pass the eighth challenge. What kind of dangers were waiting for them in the eighth challenge? Nobody knew. This challenge initially seemed peaceful, but the heavy injuries were the most bitter. Li Yaoyao, Luo Haochen, and Luo Die were all missing a hand. Although they had already stopped the bleeding, but they were not fit for fighting. Li Yaoyao didn't want to go up to the eighth layer, but this was beyond her control. Everyone spent some time and finally found the teleportation array. They rested for a short time, and after adjusting their mood, they entered the teleportation array. The teleportation this time was much longer than any other time. It was so long that everyone became increasingly nervous. Just when everyone became restless and uneasy, the teleportation array finally came to a stop. Where is this? Ziyin looked all around. Now, they found themselves in an underground tomb. White marble tiles on the ground. A fluorescent light that illuminated things came from all directions from the huge night pearls embedded all over. As a result, even if it was a tomb sealed underground, the illumination was bright enough. With this light, everyone could clearly see their surroundings. This tomb was huge, empty and spacious, so vast and endless that you couldn't see an end. But in this sealed ancient tomb, the decaying smell of ancient times assaulted their senses. In the end, where is this place? Ziyin muttered to herself in puzzlement. What's written there? Beichening pointed at the gravestone and cautiously asked. Momentarily, everyone walked up to surround the gravestone. As long as there were writings left behind, it would be able to help them resolve the mystery. However, when they saw the words on the gravestone, everyone was all struck dumb. This crooked, earthworm-like writing, none of them had ever seen it before. In the end, what exactly did they mean? Even someone as educated and widely read as Nangong Luyun shook his head slightly and frowned to say, this is probably some unknown race's ancient script. However, how could it have appeared in human race's territory? Unknown race, and still an ancient script? Who could understand this? Su Luo slanted her head to look anxiously at the little divine dragon. The little divine dragon had received the dragon race's inheritance, this ancient script from an unknown race. He ought to know it right. At this time, the little guy also exchanged an anxious glance with Su Luo. Both of his eyes were at a loss, shaking his head to indicate that he didn't understand either. Now, even the little divine dragon didn't know it. Naturally, there really wouldn't be people who understood it. Su Luo couldn't help but give a long sigh. Then, in the end, what are we supposed to do for this challenge? Ziyin asked in confusion. It could be said that she had asked the question on everyone's mind. Nobody knew what they were supposed to do for this challenge. The challenges before, they had a target immediately upon arrival, whether it was to answer questions or to fight or a gathering task. However, it was never like this challenge, where people were at a total loss. If there was a set target, their heart naturally would have a plan. The unknown was what they really dreaded. Let's go in and just search for a passageway. Nangong Luyun pondered for a while and then gave the order. Nangong Luyun had always had an authoritative aura around his body, not to mention that his cultivation was so high to an unfathomable degree. The people present, no matter whether they got along with him or not, all of them would follow him blindly. His words were even more effective than imperial edicts. They all walked forward cautiously, with prudent and guarded expressions on their faces. This underground tomb was so long as to be endless. They followed along the long corridor for nearly 2 hours, before they reached the end of the corridor. "Hey, what is that?" Bei Ching-ying cried out in surprise. Chapter 1134 The Underground Tomb 2. Following Bei Ching-ying's exclamation, everyone couldn't help but look in the same direction as him. Not far ahead from here, there was a red-colored coffin suspended a meter from the ground in mid-air. The whole thing gave off a horrifying stench of decay, penetrated with an absolutely strong, murderous aura. "Why is it that I feel a little bit cold?" Ziyin rubbed her hand and saw her exposed skin break out in goosebumps. "You're not alone." Bei Ching also followed and rubbed his hands. Like Ziyin, his skin also broke into goosebumps. Not only these two, everyone at the scene also had the terrifying feeling of their blood running cold. Maybe we should continue to walk and avoid it? I have a very bad feeling about this. A rare serious expression appeared on Bei Ching-ying's face. Bei Ching-ying was not a coward, but now, his heart was filled with a deep panic and alarm. This was something he had never felt, even when confronting a strong expert. It could be seen how much pressure that coffin gave them. Nangong Liuyun's ink-black eyes flickered like stars, unfathomable. Nobody could guess what he was thinking. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed a little, and he gave a cold shout. "Come out!" Everyone was all at a loss. "Awoo, awoo!" The little divine dragon jumped down from Su Luo's shoulders and flew full speed towards the shadow in the right corner. His speed was exceptionally fast, appearing like a blur in everyone's eyes. Then, they lost track of him. "Where is this something?" Li Yaoyao pulled on Situ Ming's sleeve and asked in low voice. "It seems to be a very pure and strong flavor. Let's wait for the little divine dragon to come back and have a look." Situ Ming could only feel a bit of difference, unable to say the specifics. If it wasn't for Nangong Liuyun's shout, he simply hadn't sensed it at all. However, half of Situ Ming's words were a guess. Because the little divine dragon didn't capture the enemy as they had expected and bring it back. Instead, very quickly, came the cries of the little divine dragon. How strong was the little divine dragon? Su Luo was aware of it. At that time, Li Yaoxiang was left utterly helpless by the little divine dragon messing around with him. But now, the little divine dragon was suddenly at a disadvantage. Su Luo, in the blink of an eye, landed not far from that corner. Nangong Luyun was deeply afraid she would be injured and directly hugged her to his chest. However, this posture didn't obstruct her line of sight. Su Luo saw the current little divine dragon and couldn't help but feel that it was hilarious. The corner was pitch black and shadowy. If you looked carefully, you could see a little cave in that corner. The little divine dragon extended his claws to poke into the cave mouth. Originally, he probably wanted to dredge something up, but who knew? It bit me. The little divine dragon turned his head around, eyes filled with tears to look at Su Luo. That appearance looked absolutely pitiful, making Su Luo's, who had wanted to laugh, heart go soft. Little dragon is clever. Let's fish that thing out, okay? Su Luo suppressed her laughter and stroked the little divine dragon's head. Little divine dragon nodded tearfully. Although he was in so much pain that tears directly came out, but who told him to pick such a heartless little master? Our little divine dragon silently used his own claws as bait, trying to fish the little thing out of the cave. Ah, it's not a thing? Su Luo was astonished. She originally thought that some sort of magical beast was hidden in the cave, but who would have known that it was a baby wearing a red doo-doo one? The baby in the red doo-doo was around 3 or 4 years old, as if he had walked out of a New Year's painting. He was fair and soft, round and plump, full of joy. But on this little guy's head was a green leaf that looked a lot like a ginseng leaf. At this moment, the little guy bit tightly on the little divine dragon's claw, making him want to cry but lacking the tears. Suddenly, another shadow flashed by Su Luo's shoulders. So, it turned out to be the nine-tailed spirit fox. Howl, howl, howl. The little nine-tailed spirit fox charged at the ginseng baby like an artillery shell, while howling out threats along the way. Normally, the little nine-tailed spirit fox also frequently bullied the little divine dragon. But seeing him being bullied by someone else, she absolutely wouldn't allow it. One could only see that all of a sudden, she charged towards the back of the ginseng baby, going straight to bite down on that snow-white tinder buttock. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo, boo-hoo. The ginseng baby immediately started to wail from being bitten. Ah, ah. The little divine dragon was also in pain. Howl, howl, howl. The little nine-tailed spirit fox was determined not to let the ginseng baby have an easy time. For a moment, the 3 little guys' voices rose and fell in succession. Sobs, roars, and howls mixed together. Just so happened that every one of these 3 little guys' strength was very strong. Their voices contained the strength of heaven and earth, making everyone's ears echo with buzzing sounds. Li Yao Yao, with the worst cultivation among them, her ears vibrated until they nearly bled. Su Luo suddenly felt that her head had expanded. Bei Qining hurriedly said to Su Luo, "Sister-in-law, quickly make them stop. I'm about to go deaf. Also, if they continue to be so noisy, be careful that they may wake up whatever life form is in that coffin." Those 2 spirit pets were both Su Luo's. They were very arrogant to other people. Only Su Luo could do anything about them. Su Luo didn't have any choice. She stepped forward and lifted each of them up and brought them back. The little divine dragon was crying and spasming sporadically with sobs, as if having suffered an enormous wrong. That little appearance of sobbing spasmodically on and off made Su Luo unsure of whether to laugh or cry. The little divine dragon became shy from being watched. His 2 little claws latched onto Su Luo's clothing, his little head shyly buried in her bosom. Su Luo speechlessly poked at him. Wasn't it just being bit a little mouthful? Is it worth crying as if your parents had died? You're a dragon, the almighty respected king that looked down on the world and can produce cloud with one turn of the hand and rain with another. You are from the divine dragon bloodline, okay? The little divine dragon became even more shy. His little head buried there was motionless, directly pretending to be dead. Su Luo patted his head and turned to glare at the little nine-tailed spirit fox. This little guy was different from the little divine dragon, who was naturally foolish. Normally, this little fox was cunning and fierce. Although the little divine dragon's strength was stronger, but he was always still bullied by this fox. You. Normally, you don't yield a bit to him. Now, you bit so hard? The crystal stones produced by the amethyst crystal fish in her space originally was taken care of by the little divine dragon. But ever since the little nine-tailed spirit fox's arrival, the little divine dragon wasn't able to get another crystal stone. The little fox lifted her tails, raised her chin, and humphed twice. Only I can bully the little dragon. Su Luo rubbed her chin and she glanced between them with feigned seriousness in her eyes. Could it be that this little nine-tailed spirit fox wanted to walk the barbaric girlfriend route? Su Luo's expression when looking at the two spirit pets made their fur stand on their ends. Sister-in-law, there's still another one here crying until the sky vibrates with the sound. Baichen Ing reminded Su Luo. Su Luo turned her gaze to look. Currently, the ginseng baby was sobbing spasmodically off and on. He used a plump, circular finger to point at Su Luo's group of people. He sobbed accusingly. "And I leo si mi nan." Su Luo's face had an at-a-loss blank expression. She looked towards Nangong Luyun, but only exchanged an identical expression of dismay. In the end, what was this little guy saying? Completely incomprehensible, okay? Su Luo tried to communicate with him. "Child, why are you here alone? Where is your family? There is a teleportation array here. Do you know about it?" Ginseng baby rubbed the tears from his eyes and glared at Su Luo at a loss. Is this pretty older sister speaking bird language? Momentarily, their surroundings fall abnormally quiet. 1. Doo-doo. As mentioned before, this is a square cloth laid on a person's body as a diamond tied around a person's neck at one corner on top. The two side corners are tied around the back. This serves as undergarment for kids and bra for females. Chapter 1135. The Underground Tomb. 3. There was simply no way to communicate. What to do? Su Luo spread out her hands, expressing she simply had no method. And I lay Zaoku. Wu Zaoku and Ba. Ginseng baby waved his hands, immediately about to leave. Su Luo hastily shouted for him to stop. If she let him leave, where would they find another person to ask about the teleportation array? Su Luo picked up the little divine dragon whose head was buried against her chest. This baby is speaking bird language. Do you understand it or not? Su Luo's only hope was placed on the little divine dragon's body, although this last bit of hope was on the verge of crumbling. The little divine dragon shook his head, at a loss. Although he had inherited memory, however, he was still young. Not all of the memories were passed on. As a result, he still didn't know a lot of stuff. Su Luo tried to use sign language to communicate with the ginseng baby. However, the other party's face remained innocent and at a loss. Okay, completely unable to communicate. Just when Su Luo was completely out of ideas, a heavy sigh came to her mind. Presently, the people of today, alas, there isn't anybody who understands the mystic clan's language. It really is hard to imagine. This was the little stone's voice. Su Luo smacked her head. How could she have forgotten about this major character? If anybody understood the mainland, nobody could compare to the little stone who emerged to tower over everyone countless of thousands of years ago. Mystic Clan? Could this ginseng baby be from the Mystic Clan? Su Luo used her mind to communicate with Little Stone. In the coffin is a leader from Mystic Clan. No wonder its breath was so formidable, giving people such terrifying feeling. Su Luo suddenly realized, quickly tell me, do you understand Mystic Clan's language? Know a little more or less. Little Stone proudly lifted an eyebrow. Since Little Stone said he knows it more or less, then it was sufficient proof that there wouldn't be problems communicating. However, how can I let you communicate with that child? Take you out from my space? Su Luo felt that if she let everyone see that the little stone could also speak, when the time comes, after it's been spread out, it would be another major troublesome matter. Treasure attracts disaster. She knew this saying better than anyone else. No need. Borrowing your consciousness is fine. Little Stone went along with Su Luo this time, and very easily agreed. When Su Luo opened her eyes again, the cold, clear pupils carried a thread of penetrating strength. And I lay Zaoku. Ginseng baby seethingly pointed at the gates to go out. This time, Su Luo understood. So it turned out that this little guy was yelling at them to leave. With great difficulty, they ran into this little living person. Only if Su Luo was a fool would she leave. Little guy, are you from the Mystic Clan? Su Luo used the Mystic Clan's language to communicate with the ginseng baby. As soon as Su Luo said those difficult and hard-to-pronounce words, it immediately startled everyone as their jaws dropped to the floor. Momentarily, everyone's eyes was focused on Su Luo. They all looked at Su Luo as if having seen a ghost. What she said just now sounded similar to what the ginseng baby said. Ginseng baby's eyes immediately opened wide in surprise, and he rubbed his eyes. So it turned out that this pretty older sister was also from the Mystic Clan? I am from Mystic Clan, and you? What is he saying? Beichening asked in surprise. He said he is from the Mystic Clan, and then asked if I was also from the clan. Su Luo finished answering Beichening. Then she squatted down and smiled gently and good-naturedly at the ginseng baby. Tell this older sister, who was in that coffin? Ginseng baby stuck his chubby finger in his mouth and slanted his head to size up this pretty older sister. Su Luo slapped her head. How could she have forgotten about that thing? Su Luo took a small bottle of high-grade celestial spirit water from her space. Like a big bad wolf coaxing a little rabbit, she said, "Do you like the taste of this?" Chapter 1136, The Underground Tomb, 4. She even pulled out the bottle stopper, fanning it to spread that clear spirit scent that was characteristic of celestial spirit water. High-grade celestial spirit water, regardless if it was for people or magical beasts, naturally had an attractiveness for all. Therefore, when the celestial spirit water's scent permeated through the air, transparent saliva flowed out of the corner of the ginseng baby's mouth. Want it? First answer a question. Su Luo enticingly coaxed. The ginseng baby, biting his finger, with a voice like sticky rice, said, "Hi Gaishi Baba." What did he say? Beichening was unable to endure his temperament and ran around in circles from curiosity. He said that the person in that coffin is his father. Su Luo finished answering and once again continued to ask several questions. However, the ginseng baby was still young. His memory wasn't clear. Besides knowing that he was of the Mystic Clan, he was completely ignorant about everything else, which made Su Luo extremely confused. As if the ginseng baby saw Su Luo's confusion, for that bottle of delicious water, he strided with small steps and ran. Wa Zao Kaiju Babasanlei, shouted. Su Luo, with one move, pulled the little guy back. What did he say? Ziyin curiously asked. He said to go wake up his father. His father knows everything. Su Luo unhappily said. How can we let him? The aura in that coffin is too powerful. Moreover, it's exceptionally frightening. We won't end up getting any answers, but instead, we'll be completely wiped out. Ziyan's worry wasn't without reason. Compared to this pure aura from the ginseng baby, that aura coming from the coffin gave off a sinister dark strength. Just from thinking, one knew it wasn't someone easy to get along with. Su Luo stuffed that pinky-sized bottle in the ginseng baby's arms. In a seemingly real and fake manner, she said, "Don't bother the venerable elder's peace and quiet. If the venerable elder wakes up, he won't be able to sleep again." Oh, the ginseng baby scratched his head, only half understanding. However, he also knew that this high-grade celestial spirit water was good stuff, lapping at it one small mouthful at a time, very much treasuring it. For a moment, the surroundings were somewhat quiet. Just now Su Luo had already asked. The little guy said he didn't see something called teleportation array. Thus, wanting to leave unscathed was already impossible. Search all around the place. It's impossible that there isn't a teleportation array. Nangong Liuyun's tone was indifferent, but it had an indescribable prestige. Thus, very quickly, the 8 people scattered in groups. Time passed, by minutes and seconds. Suddenly, a mournful screech erupted in the tomb. Ah! It's Li Yao Yao. Su Luo's complexion immediately didn't look very good. Nangong Liuyun's complexion also sunk to an extreme low point, because he could feel an enormous aura begin to pervade throughout the tomb, and this aura was extremely similar to that venerable guy's in the coffin. Run! Nangong Liyun carried Su Luo on his back. With several leaps, they arrived at Li Yaoyao's side. At this moment, Li Yaoyao's whole body was rigid, both arms and a hand covering her head, continuously erupting into sharp yells, as if having been scared to the extreme. Situ Ming hugged her to him, continuously consoling her, persuading her, but to no avail. Nangong Luyun had a calm expression. His tone was as cold as frost. Situ Ming, you're too indecisive. If the noise woke up that venerable guy, will you bear the consequences? At the same time Nangong Luyun was speaking, his sleeves brushed past. Then Li Yaoyao's body softly fell into Situ Ming's embrace. Just at this moment, Beichening shouted, "Not good, not good. That venerable guy in the coffin is about to sit up." Su Luo, with an annoyed complexion, swept a glance at Situ Ming. If when Li Yaoyao first shrieked, Situ Ming was able to make a prompt decision and hit her to cause her to faint, then there wouldn't be this matter right now. Chapter 1137. The Underground Tomb, 5. That hateful Li Yaoyao. Ziyin was so depressed that she almost grabbed her hair. Bei Qining anxiously said, "Hurry up and think of a way. When this old bastard wakes up, who can stop him, ah?" That ancient powerful aura was more and more intense. It made people have the urge to seize control of the situation by fleeing. Although Bei Qining didn't know to what extent this venerable guy's strength was, but he could say for certain that of all the people he had met in his entire life, this aura was the strongest and the most frightening. Nangong Liuyun's complexion was also gloomy to the extreme, because he didn't even have the slightest certainty of winning. Creak, creak, the lid of that heavy coffin sent out these noises. Every sound was like a battle drum, ruthlessly pounding on everyone's heart. Take precautions, prepare to fight. Nangong Luyun took a step forward, standing at the very front of the troops. At this moment, his expression was cold, solemn, and unprecedentedly serious. That mysterious coffin made several sounds and stopped, but everyone's heart was nevertheless beating like a drum. Sure enough, not long after, one could only hear a heavy bang sound. That heavy coffin lid firmly smashed to the floor, smashing the white marble floor into smithereens. It was extremely quiet inside the coffin, very dark. There was a weird atmosphere of extreme stillness in the surroundings. Everyone held their breath with rapt attention, with eyes opened, looking at that very dark inner coffin. That powerful and frightening aura became increasingly dense. Suddenly, one could only hear a whooshing sound. That weird corpse in the coffin unexpectedly stiffly sat upright. One could only see his whole body was pitch black, with a triangle-shaped head, eyes bulging out, and garlic-like nose caved in. Based on human standards, it was simply ugly to death. However, at this moment, no one dared to mock him, because this strange corpse, although his eyes were tightly closed, but his nose sprayed out black air. Don't know if this strange corpse was dead or alive. If one said he was alive, against all reason, he sat stiffly up in the coffin, with both eyes tightly closed, motionless. If one said he was dead, against all reason, he could still spray out a strange air with a formidable killing power. After the black air diffused past the night pearls in midair, those night pearls and everything within several meters range all became fine powder. Seeing this, everyone's complexion all had huge changes, even Nangong Liuyun's complexion sunk. The black air has a very strong attack and corrosive nature. Everyone must be careful. Nangong Luyun frowned. His face was cold, solemn, and cautious. That black air stayed in midair for a long time and didn't disperse, moreover. In the wake of more and more black air being sprayed out, the safe area then decreased more and more. How do we exterminate this black air? Bei Qining was extremely anxious. Su Luo's heart was also anxious. The black air wouldn't disappear. There would only be more and more of it being sprayed out. At that time, they didn't need to fight. They would directly be crushed into fine powder by this black air. Suddenly, Su Luo slapped her head. The ginseng baby. How could she forget this treasure? Su Luo turned her head and lifted up the ginseng baby. impatiently inquiring. Quickly tell older sister, what can block the black air? If it was to kill that strange corpse, they didn't even need to think about it, because the strength this strange corpse emitted out was more than one level higher than Nangong Luyun. It should have entered the legendary saint range. Moreover, it was a very strong existence among the saint range. The ginseng baby sucked on his white, plump little finger, cocked his head, and a pair of monochrome huge eyes looked at Su Luo in puzzlement. Shi Chi Hia, Bu11 Bu? What is he saying? A huge question mark hung over Nangong Liuyun's forehead. Chapter 1138. The Underground Tomb, 6. He said that this black air is very tasty, extremely filling. Su Luo speechlessly had her hand on her forehead. Having heard what was said, everyone's eyes spun around like a mosquito-repellent incense coil. Su Luo, this large-tailed wolf, once again turned into a good-natured sheep and stroked the ginseng baby's little head, revealing a smile of someone about to kidnap a child. Could it be that this black air is your daily food? Yeah, yeah. Little ginseng baby nodded his head in haste. Su Luo gracefully gazed at the sky, speechless. As it turned out, this strange black air was provided as ginseng baby's food. It turned out that their group of people had terrible luck, just so happened to encounter it. Perhaps it was really very filling for ginseng baby, but for them, this was an existence that was extremely fatal. Su Luo once again smiled and asked, since this black air is very filling, then it is a pity to waste so much of it, right? There must be a way to stop it, right? The little ginseng baby cocked his head, with a perplexed expression. And I lay by Fuqia? What is he saying? Bei Chening, seeing them, one big one small, whispering, and the black air here once again gradually closing in, asked urgently. He said that this black air is his food. He even very hospitably wanted to invite us to eat it. Su Luo's voice hadn't fallen yet and, sure enough, she saw Bei Chenying's constipated face. Eat, eat, eat. Bei Chenying's eyes were opened wide like copper bells, disbelieving this to the extreme. Su Luo shrugged her shoulders. The original words were exactly like this. For a period, everyone was speechless. Inside the room, it was filled with a strange quiet. Su Luo once again continued her tempting, coaxing plan. We won't eat it. Do you have a way? Tell older sister. Okay? Watching as the black air got closer and closer, everyone continuously retreated. The ginseng baby used a pitying gaze to look at Su Luo. Beautiful older sister was really foolish. Such tasty stuff, and she didn't even want to eat it. Yao Biefu. Gong Wu Zhaolai. Ginseng baby waved his hand, gallantly and valiantly walked around to in front of them. Who would have thought that ginseng baby would actually go towards that coffin? Bei Chening secretly pulled at Su Luo's sleeves. What did this little plump baby say? Su Luo's expression was unperturbed. He said he had a way, we just follow him, it would be correct. But that coffin's location was encircled with thick, fog-like air, a dense black area, like being covered by a dense dark cloud. If one touched even a little of it, wouldn't they be turned into fine powder? This matter hasn't gotten that bad. Su Luo's eyes shone, because she found that wherever the ginseng baby went, that black air was actually absorbed by him, automatically freeing up a very small path. Let's go. Nangong Luyun made the prompt decision, pulling Su Luo to follow closely behind the ginseng baby. The rest, seeing this, also caught up, one after another. Behind the coffin, there was a small piece of earth that wasn't corroded by the black air. Up ahead of this place was a slightly high stone altar. Two double-edged swords were inserted into the stone altar. A double-edged blue sword with dazzling brilliance. A double-edged black sword that was so dark it lacked light. Don't know how long these two double-edged swords had existed, and like that coffin, its entire body emitted an ancient aged aura. At the moment, the little ginseng baby stood in that place, pointing at the two double-edged swords up ahead. He said to Su Luo, Dg Bo Chi Lei, Zo Ko Eb. What? Bei Qining now directly took Su Luo as the official translator. Every time little ginseng baby said a sentence, he would then ask about the sentence. He said to pull out these two double-edged swords, then we'll be fine. Su Luo smilingly said, just this simple? Bei Qining still didn't believe it. He took a step to directly pull out the double-edged swords. Since it's like this, then, I'll keep trying everything in a desperate situation and give it a try. Chapter 1139. The Underground Tomb. 7. Bei Qining, without saying anything more, directly went up to pull out the double-edged sword. That double-edged blue sword clearly wasn't an ordinary item. Bei Qining's heart had some restraining fear. Therefore, he first went to pull out that long black sword. However, just as Bei Qining extended his hand, when it was a thumb's distance away from that long black sword, suddenly the surroundings around the long black sword had an odd, faint fluctuation, blocking Bei Qining from getting near it. Bei Qining didn't believe it. He condensed his whole body's spirit force into the hollow of his right palm. Bit by bit, his palm slowly reached towards that long black sword hilt. At the moment, Bei Qining's fair face was covered with sweat, both eyes scarlet red. Very clearly, he had already exhausted all his strength. Afterwards, he finally touched the long black sword's hilt. However, an unforeseen event suddenly happened at this moment. One only saw Bei Qinin's body seem to have suffered a heavy hit. He trembled violently, and then a loud bang sounded. Bei Qinin's body suddenly flew backwards and heavily smashed against the coffin, sending out an intense hitting sound. He directly spat out a mouthful of blood while covering his chest, coughing continuously. Inside the great hall, everyone's gazes carried astonishment, uniformly gazing at those two ancient swords in the stone altar. A very hard to deal with attacking power, Situ Ming said, stunned. Just now, when Bei Qining was sent flying from the jolt, at the same time, they also felt a powerful rebound force. Only, because they didn't face the force head-on, therefore, they were barely able to withstand it. These two swords were definitely not ordinary. Very possibly, they were exceptionally famous swords. But their attack power were terrible. After Bei Qining was sent flying, Ziyin anxiously ran over. With a deeply concerned face, she said, Bei Qin, how are you? Are you all right? Helped up by Ziyin, Bei Qining's face carried a trace of shock. This sword is very strange. It actually can launch an attack on its own. Su Luo, seeing he was seriously injured, gave him a pill that treated internal injuries. After Bei Qining swallowed it, he sat in place to meditate. At this moment, Nangong Liuyun's gaze gradually became heavy. His pair of eyes stared at those two swords in the stone altar. Suddenly, brilliant lights and vibrant colors flashed through his gaze. What's going on? Su Luo saw that his expression was different and walked up to his side to inquire in a low voice. If I didn't guess wrong, those two double-edged swords ought to be the Qi Shao sword and Chengying sword from Legends. Nangong Liuyun's eyes were like bright stars, glistening and dazzling. Qi Shao sword and Chengying sword? Li Yaoyao, having heard what was said, exclaimed in surprise. These two swords had continuously been passed on in legends, practically buried in the long river of history. But now, they had unexpectedly appeared here? Qi Shao sword and Chengying sword? Are they very well known? Su Luo expressed her puzzlement. What only famous? They're simply so well known, like thunder piercing the ear. Only you, this kind of ignorant person of talent, hasn't heard of them. Li Yaoyao stared at Su Luo with disdain. It is said that 5,000 years ago, there was a married couple that seemingly came from out of nowhere. They each had an exceptionally famous sword. Together, they challenged the sects all over the entire world, simply battling until they were unrivaled. Those exceptional swords were precisely Qi Shao sword and Chengying sword. Su Luo cast her an indifferent glance, unconcerned. The corner of Li Yaoyao's mouth rose from being immensely proud of herself. At that time, I and third senior brother read this story together. Don't believe me? Asked third senior brother. Su Luo was unruffled. She was all smiles. It seemed to her that the present Li Yaoyao was too childish. Simply like a clown jumping up and down, Su Luo really was too lazy to pay any attention to her. Li Yaoyao took a few steps forward, carefully sizing up those two double-edged swords. It is said that the Qi Shao sword is about 71 centimeters long. The hilt is made of red jade from the deep seas. The sword blade is engraved with a complicated dragon pattern. Chapter 1140, The Underground Tomb, 8. She once again continued to speak. Cheng Ying's sword is 59 centimeters long. The sword hilt is made with white jade from the snowy mountains. The sword blade is engraved with a complicated phoenix pattern. These two double-edged swords, although they seemed simple, unadorned, and old-fashioned, however, all traits matched with what Li Yaoyao had said. Indeed, they are Qi Shao sword and the Cheng Ying sword. Nangong Liuyun's voice was very mild, but since he said it, then there was a 100% certainty. Having gotten a sentence of confirmation from Nangong Liuyun, Li Yaoyao became increasingly proud of herself, and she coldly snorted at Su Luo. You don't even know such simple historical knowledge? Don't you feel inferior? What qualifications do you have to stand by third senior brother's side? Nangong Liuyun's gaze was like the cold moon, slanting a harsh glance at Li Yaoyao. Although Li Yaoyao was silent, she still couldn't accept this. Nangong Liuyun's expression was apathetic, his tone rightfully cold. Since everyone came here together, everyone has a share in this Qi Shao sword and Cheng Ying sword. Being swept over by his gaze, Luo Haochen's heart trembled, but he hurriedly squeezed out a smile. What His Highness Prince Jin says goes. Nangong Liuyun's gaze was ice-cold, as if he hadn't heard the praise. Then, once again he said a sentence indifferently, however, there are only two swords, therefore, everyone each has to rely on their ability. Who has the ability to pull out these two swords will get to take them. Finished speaking, he crossed his arms, indifferently leaning against a column at the side, his eyes sweeping over everyone. Everyone's expression was all different. Luo Haochen, pleasantly surprised, gazed at that dark without light Qi Shao sword. Once the Qi Shao sword appeared, who wouldn't strive for it? The attractiveness of this sword, for Luo Haochen, was greater than any treasure. Moreover, Qi Shao's sword recognizing its master depended on destiny, not necessarily based on ability. Good, I endorse this. Luo Haochen was the first to agree. Luo Jie's entire attention was already attracted away by that Cheng Ying sword. Seeing her older brother agree, she also hurriedly nodded. In this group, no one could deny that all of them combined couldn't compare to half of Nangong Liuyun. If Nangong Liuyun decided to completely and unreasonably expropriate these two swords for himself, they could only watch on helplessly. Now, since he had given everyone a fair chance, then, whoever didn't seize it was a fool. Situ Ming and Li Yaoyao also agreed immediately after. Su Luo voluntarily took a step back. Standing by Nangong Liuyun's side, she faintly smiled. Now, whoever is interested, then hurry and go up, okay? There are already more and more of this black air. Apart from this area of 3 square meters they were in, the entire Great Hall had already been enveloped by the black air. The entire hall appeared pitch black as ink, like the night. In any case, the black air can't come into this area of ours. Why on earth do you care? Li Yaoyao glared at Su Luo. However, very quickly, Li Yaoyao was slapped in the face. Ah, that black air unexpectedly. Luo Jie covered her mouth in astonishment. Her eyes opened very wide. That black air originally diffused in the air like smoke, but now, it actually assembled into a rope. Moreover, it was still continuously condensing. Su Luo's complexion slightly changed. This is about to condense into a pillar. Although a rope couldn't break in, however, if it formed a pillar, the safe protected place they were in, sooner or later, would be broken through from the impact. When the time came, everyone would lose their life under this black air. Pull out the sword. Nangong Liuyun's expression was indifferent, voice calm like a towering mountain. He made the fretful hearts of people calm down very quickly. Second senior brother. Li Yaoyao pushed Situ Ming a bit. She wanted that Chunging sword. Before Situ Ming could react, Luo Haochen already took a step forward. I'll go first. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.